Welcome to Internal Audit Real Conversations, brought to you by the IIA-Australia Victoria Chapter. From internal audit to risk and governance, we share real stories and expert insights to reveal what it takes to build a meaningful career and help shape stronger, more resilient organisations.
Hello and welcome to our first Institute of Internal Audit Australia Victorian Chapter podcast series, where we have real conversations with practitioners across the internal audit profession. This is the start of our new journey. I'm Raghid Madi, the chair of the Victorian Chapter. This podcast isn't about answering a set of interview questions. It's more about hearing about experiences, lessons learned, and the moments that shape how we think and operate as internal auditors. Today, I'm joined by Judith Charlton, the head of internal audit at a superannuation entity. Judith, great to have you with us. Thanks you for joining. Before we dive in, this is a relaxed conversation. We're really interested in your journey, your experiences, and some of the stories that don't always get told in formal settings. Before we dive in, can we get an introduction? And how did you actually end up in internal audit?
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me for your first one. Excited to be here.
You're welcome.
And I think, as you know, it's really important to take some time out and support the profession and reflect. So thank you once again for inviting me. So I think in terms of where did I start out? So I studied my accountancy qualifications full-time at university, and I fell into internal audit. It was my first job out of university. I guess a little bit of context to that. When I was studying the accountancy qualification, we had a module on audit, and it did cover internal audit. And I actually did think it was going to be really quite boring.
Yeah.
The professor used to read notes out in the meeting, in the classroom, and I was just like, this can't be as dull as it really sounds. And I got my first job was internal audit. It was internal auditor at a hospital. It was like a consortium of hospitals, and so my first job, and I sort of sat there and was reflecting on the notes that I took at university, and thinking I would be sat in a little back room analysing data and just sort of putting things together and maybe having a few conversations. But I never realised at that time the value of internal audit and the importance of internal audit, and so I guess we'll explore some of them. But that was probably one of the, when you sort of look back over your career and you go, I was really naive. I just thought it was going to be one of these.
That's a good point. Like, what did you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think I just thought it was going to be maybe analysing some data and sitting in a back room and writing some reports, and probably not being really in that spotlight and in that front light. And I think I learned really quickly. I mean, one of my early jobs was doing a stock count in theatres in one of the hospitals in the north of England, and naively I thought theatres would shut while we did the stock count. And I got down to do this stock count and had to get all suited into the equipment. They were continuing to operate in rooms next door to me while I was counting little screws and things. And so I was like, wow, this is like not what I would have ever envisaged myself and thought internal audit would be. So you'd sort of sit there and look back at that and go, wow, yeah.
It's a completely different environment, ending up in a hospital.
And one of the other jobs was as well. One of the other early ones was I was auditing petty cash, and as part of that, I had to go out and speak to people in like the cafeterias and like through the canteens, and you look back, and all of these cafeterias are around people who volunteer and give back to the community. And I remember speaking to one of the volunteers, and we were talking about the till and how we reconcile the till, and she said to me, it always balances. And I looked at her and I was like, well, why does it always balance? And she said, oh, well, we have this little bag of money, and so when it's under, we take this money out of this little bag, and so
That's a red flag.
It reconciles, and then when it's over, we take it out and put it in this little bag. And I had to sort of remind her that I said, I'm an unscrupulous employee, and you're hiding potentially me stealing from the hospital. And they just didn't see it like that, and they just thought internal audit was somebody to be feared and somebody who probably wasn't there to help them.
Yes.
And so it was really like trying to help people understand that. So,
yeah. Was there a moment during these audits that you think shaped how you do internal audit today?
Yeah, I think there was, and I think there was a few. I think anybody who's audited anything like in terms of health or hospitals learns very, very quickly how misunderstanding and miscommunication can impact and set an audit off on the wrong foot. So it's similar probably in education, calling in a hospital, if you call a Mr. a doctor or a doctor a Mr. dependent on which profession they are, they can get really upset. I mean, it can really set it off on the wrong foot. I think when you sort of look, when I look back, it's that around how do you help, and how do you help people understand the role of internal audit and understand that actually you can help them.
Yeah.
Yes, we have an assurance role, absolutely, and we have that role for the board, but we are also here to help an organisation achieve its objectives and its outcomes, and so we are there to help.
And it's in the definition.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in Australia? You started in the UK.
Yeah, so how did I end up in Australia? So from the age of about 8, I said I was going to become an accountant and emigrate to Australia.
Okay.
I blame a soap opera in the UK because one of the characters in this soap opera was an accountant, and when she left the show, she emigrated to Australia, and so I was like, that's obviously what you do. And so it was always a dream. I never thought it would become a reality. I got a once in a lifetime trip to come to Australia and managed to drag my now husband along with me, and we just went, why not? Let's try it. So that's how we ended up here, and we'll have been here 20 years in August. So. And
you've always been an internal auditor between the UK and Australia?
So I had a little bit of a sort of I guess, into risk. When I worked in some of the financial services organisations in the UK, we didn't really have the 3 lines of defence back then so much. So once I left hospitals, I went into consulting for a while, and then I went to a financial services organisation, and my title was Senior Risk Consultant.
Yeah, we all started there.
But I was basically internal audit and risk. But I also did do a stint in what I would call a proper finance role.
Yeah.
And again, that was sort of looking at some policyholder tax for it, and that proper finance role taught me that I actually operate better with the ability to have flexibility, meet different people, give advice rather than sit in a box doing checklisty type things.
Yeah, which is shifting between an assurance role and advisory role.
Yeah.
It's a great experience. What was the most challenging experience you've had?
Oh, look, you look back, and there's been a few. I think in terms of that, every challenge that you have is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's something that you sort of sit back and you look back and you go, these things shape you as you go along. So, my early career in hospitals were, obviously shaped me first of all. I got some really good sound advice from a mentor at the time who said, do Big Four experience and accountancy experience, use that, you'll never go wrong. I think, I used, when I was at the consultancy organisation, I used to audit colleges and councils, and one of the colleges we used to audit like income, particularly like this. It was a bit of more of an external audit lens, but I had somebody at that organisation be very aggressive and, shout at me and throw things at me off of tables. So you sort of sit there and have to really go, when you calm down, we can have a better conversation as to how I can help you solve this problem, but don't shoot the messenger. But I think the biggest one is obviously the Royal Commission. That was one of the biggest
We're going to jump into that because that's a detail. Any advice you want to give people who are in a similar situation where they're still getting shouted at, thrown stuff at, when, especially in closing meetings?
So I think in terms of that, you've always got to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and try and understand where they're coming from. At the end of the day, they have a job as well as you have a job, and so listen. Try not to defend your audit actions so much. Listen with curiosity and listen to understand why they are reacting in that way. What is it that you have either misunderstood, misheard? But then also actually, if you are sure of your facts and your information, then let's have a conversation when we can actually digest this information and absorb the information. Most people will respond in different ways, and I think when you get a response of anger, it's because people feel that they've either not been consulted, or you've blindsided them, or there's just stuff going on in their lives that you may or may not know about, and sometimes you've just got to accept that you're the recipient of something. I'm a big believer in that attitude is a choice and how you respond is a choice. So my biggest advice would be choose your response. And sometimes your response is just to say, let's do this later.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you for that. Talking about difficult situations that didn't go as planned, do you want to share the Royal Commission experience?
Yeah, look, and so obviously the Royal Commission into the financial services was a big forming part, and I describe that as the best and the worst time of my career. And I think, I sort of look back and obviously the worst time, with the scrutiny that was going into the financial services organisations, the media, and that realisation that, what people see on the outside of an organisation is not always what's happening and what you experience inside. And as part of that, I was subject to being, conversations with the regulators, and that really does form a different perspective, because you're on the other side of it. Then you're on the other side of being interviewed, and you're on the other side, and it really makes you think about and question, well, what did I do, and who did I tell, and did I do something wrong? Did I miss something? Yeah. So you sort of sit there and you become like, oh, wow, did I genuinely miss something? And then you then start to go, no, actually, the audit methodologies, the audit processes, the standards that we have all help us and shape us and protect us. Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have that, this is what we did, this is who we told, this is our role, this is how we can do that. And that, being able to explain that, and I think that experience has now shaped in terms of where I am at, but also around helping others and sharing that experience, because hopefully none of you will ever have to go through that. Yeah. But if you do, that you're not alone, and there is actually, you actually do have things to be able to back you up and to cover you, your case, and support yourself. So I think that whole experience, and that's when I say it was the best time, because the learnings from that.
Yes, from that lens, yes.
Yeah, and from that landscape, and the fact that it taught me around what my values were, what my sense of purpose was, why I do what I do. It does bring that energy. For me, it brought a bit of a energy, and I'm really grateful for what I do. Yeah. And so that experience does definitely shape you.
Did you go through any doubt, like, why am I doing this? Yeah. Why do I need to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was at one point I went, I'm out. I am.
Not for me. Go back to the hospital.
Yeah, and I actually was like, I'm out. I'm going to go do something completely different. I was like thinking about what could I do that was completely not audit risk related, because I was that spent, where you get to a point where you just go, wow.
Yeah.
And I think then, COVID as well,
It was around that period.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like the Royal Commission was just before COVID.
Okay.
I think, what was it, about 2018, 2019, and then COVID was 2020.
Yeah.
And so through COVID, I actually did some study. I studied positive psychology and well-being completely away from... I was in a room of people who were probably more from HR, counsellors, that sort of background. I was the only accountant who was coming from this sort of background. But that gave me this refound lens and focus about what I do, why I do it, but how you can use then those positive psychology techniques to be able to then frame and bring. And you spoke about how, when you deal with difficult conversations, not everything has to be worst case scenario. No. You can actually also change it. And so, I'll often play, you do play devil's advocate, but you also then go, well, what is the opportunity here, or what's the missed opportunity, and trying to reframe it in a way that people can go, I get it. What's in it for me? What's the benefit for me? Because most people just want to do their job well.
Just finish.
And and if they can see why this will help them and either help them do their job better or more efficiently or more effectively, your story's told.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting. After all these years, you still identify as an accountant, not an internal auditor.
Well, I think this is in terms of now. I mean, if anybody asks me and says, what do you do? I would say I'm a head of internal audit for a superannuation entity. I think it's just, obviously, I would not say I was an accountant. Purely from the perspective, but I mean, it was my training and grounding. And I think, a lot of internal auditors often have that training of accountancy in the background, because you probably go into your external audit type scenario and then move into an internal audit environment. I think the real opportunity now for internal audit in the profession is to break that myth that you have to be an accountant to go into internal audit, because you can have such diverse experience that brings a different perspective, and that, yes, it's one route, but it's not the only route.
It's not the only route. Well, you described the situation. What advice would you give to anyone who's going to go through that situation or have been through that situation, and got to that frustrating point? What advice would you give them? Not everyone is going to do a psychology degree.
Yeah, look, I think it's just in terms of that. So what advice would I give them? I think be assured in your training, your grounding, your background in terms of that, how you've got to where you've got. We do have methodologies and processes and all of those type of things. So that is your safety net, if you almost want to say from that. But then I think is in terms of that, use it as a learning and use it as a reflection, because you only grow from adversity.
Your mistakes.
and your mistakes, you do. And that's how you learn, and that's how you grow, and that's how you continue to grow. I think if you stop growing, then you need to find something that helps you grow.
Yeah.
If you stop being curious and stop learning, then it's time to think about what do you want to do next, because
life is about differently.
Yeah, life is about learning and growing and being curious. That's my.
No, that's beautifully said. It's true. Well, we mentioned the standards, and they have changed. How do you think internal audit has evolved since you started till today?
Yeah, I think how has it evolved? I think in terms of that. So technology's evolved since I started. I started with pieces of paper, which I've got in front of me as well, and you've got iPads and things like that in terms of just around giving me some cheat notes and things. But I think in terms of how is it, so when I look back in those very early ones, it was all about historically, what did people, for want of a better phrase, do wrong?
Yeah.
We were always seen as the policeman and the checking, and it's very compliant.
Find the
and
mistake.
almost find the mistake, which is why I think a lot of people feared internal audit, because you were there to check up on and have a lot of mistake. And I think it was, it is, that quite backwards looking. Where I see, I think, where it's going and it's evolving now is that actually, we're becoming from, we're moving away from the backwards looking, and we're becoming that facilitator of decision making. And if you think about, that's what we are actually there. And I was doing something else a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things is that I was saying is that your report is not the value.
Interesting.
Yeah. The value is the decisions the report enables.
Correct. Yeah.
So the report is just your documenting anything and your outcome, but that's not actually the value. It's the value is how that can facilitate conversations and different decisions. And so you sort of sit there, and when you think about that, and I think if we think about looking forwards about how can we facilitate and help management make decisions,
drive the change. Yeah.
You're driving the change, you're being the continuous learning, continuous improvement, and you are thinking about what things can be doing to make things better and fit for future, not just fit for purpose and fit for past. Because things that happened yesterday is not guaranteed to happen tomorrow, and so how can you make sure that you can help people and look and assure for tomorrow?
That is really interesting, and I think that's where we're changed. We're not just giving reports anymore. We are starting a conversation. We're asking questions that will start a conversation, which is really interesting. What do you think we're still doing wrong?
What do I think we're still doing wrong? I think we're still doing wrong in terms of that, yet there's a time and a place, and it's not necessarily doing it wrong. There's a time and a place where we, have to look retrospectively and backwards.
Yeah.
But there's also a time and a place for we've got to absolutely have regulations and obligations and make sure that processes and systems are compliant by design. We're not just assessing compliance.
Yeah.
And so how do we change the lens from assessing to be, yes, you are compliant, to actually, yes, you're compliant by design, and these controls
optimize them.
Are optimizing it. And so I think, sometimes we can get hung, and we can sometimes get hung up in our own little process and doing business with ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a phrase I often use, and people look at me and how do we just stop the busy stuff and become effective auditors as well? So how do we make sure we become effective auditors? And that's when we can start using tools and technologies and various things.
Talking about tools and technology, how do you think that AI and a lot of our internal audit work is now data driven? How do you think that is changing and impacting us?
Yeah, so I think it's a huge opportunity for the profession and for us as individuals. I sort of look at it as I'm going to show my age a little bit now, but when I started, we used to have a piece of paper, and we'd fold a piece of paper and we'd write the process on one side and controls on the other, and we'd have all of this testing. And email was still relatively new, and so was word processing and all of those type of things. It was still relatively new. Nobody thought email would change the world. Nobody thought email,
Wow.
People would say, they're still going to do this. But think about, when was the last time you actually posted a letter?
Do they still post? Oh, yeah, they do.
They do still occasionally post letters and stuff like that. But people, email changed the world, and then the internet changed the world. Yeah. I think AI is another tool that is going to help us become more effective in our work. Yeah. I think you're still going to have to be able to be the human in the loop. It's not going to... it might replace some of the activities that we do, but I think in terms of, if we think about what some of our roles are as auditors, we're guardians of the organisation in the fact that we hold the line, we sort of help them identify where they can do things safely. But we also then sense and translate. So we see where things are going wrong, and then we translate that. And then finally, we sort of actually that, learner, and we help people, organisations, and continuously improve. I think AI will help us in those roles, but I don't know if it will ever replace those roles, because I'm not sure. It might, but I think you're still going to have that, that judgment. That
it's a tool at the end of the day, so you still need to use it to enable you. Not
so you've got to use it to enable you. And so I think in terms of that, if you've been asked, you've asked a couple of questions for advice. Is this in terms of that? Use AI, use it to challenge your assumptions and basis, and help you think about things a little bit differently. But don't always think it's just going to give you the answer, because it sometimes just gives you the answer you ask it.
Yes, and I use it, and I still feel it's not accurate 100% all the time, because it depends on the prompt you get.
Correct.
So if you're giving it wrong information, it's going to give you a wrong outcome.
Yeah, and I think in terms of, if you think about as auditors, we've got to actually then, we ask questions, and we're able to prompt, and we're able to facilitate those questions. So, see it as another... I am so polite with my AI. I say, "Good morning, Copilot. How are you today?" I am really polite with it.
Please, with every request.
Yeah, please and thank you and appreciate that. But I see it as another member of the team, for want of a better word, not a
replacement of the team.
Yeah,
which is fair.
So by doing that, then you can then use it in that sort of way, and use it to, like, hey, what did you think of what do you think of this, and what do you think of that, and help you frame things, and help you. And it speeds things up for you, so it does. Definitely you can sort of go, yeah, I'm doing this. Can you bring together what are the top 10 risks, or what are the top 10 risks, or what are the obligations, and what's the trends that are happening, what's the obligations or the regulation that's relevant. So it can speed up a lot of the traditional research and those type of activities, and so hopefully we'll start to get to outcomes more quickly. And then, if you remember what I was saying about the value is not in the report, the value is in the decision making that the report enables. If we can get to those outcomes more quickly, then we can facilitate decision making.
I think the keyword is efficiency. They make us more efficient. Interesting. Well, you mentioned compliance and how we shifted from compliance. We're talking about new tools. Do you feel we're still auditing the right things?
It's always a difficult one to answer when you think about, are you still auditing the right things? I think it really also depends on the sector that you're in, and where you are in your career. And there is that opportunity that you do actually have to do. Sometimes you do have to do compliance. If you're in financial services organisations, there's lots of APA regulations that you have to sort of look at and cycle through. But I also look at it then and go, is in terms of that, how can you actually use whatever you're doing to inform decisions? I think the relevance and the value is always going to be there. It's how you communicate it to people. If you communicate it to say, I am doing this audit because it's a compliance related audit and I have to do it, versus actually, I'm doing this audit. As part of the audit, I will bring in the compliance elements, but I'm doing it to help you.
Yeah, how you frame the objective.
Yeah, help you think about whether this process is going to be working for you efficiently and effectively, and provide assurance going forwards. Same audit, different lens.
Yeah.
As a recipient of that, which would you prefer?
I prefer the one where you're enabling me instead of telling me I'm here to do a checklist for you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, you've worked in different cultures, you've worked across different industries and accounts. From a soft skills perspective, for our young internal auditors joining, what soft skills do you think matter for us?
Communication is
not
a big
us
thing.
Anymore, for everyone.
Yeah, I know, but it is in terms of it's for everyone. It's, well, and look, I think that there are a few things, and I think when I sort of look at soft skills versus technical skills, and which is the most important, technical skills will give you the ticket to the game.
Yeah.
The soft skills will keep you in it.
Interesting.
And so, like, the soft skills are probably where you sort of sit there. So the soft skills, being able to have a conversation, being able to listen, and being able to ask questions. I think, we rely a lot on email, messaging, those type of things. We lose in the art of a conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
And with AI, you're thinking again, you just put it into a tool and it generates the answer and you send it off. So really going out and making sure that you actually have that art of a conversation. You do listen with curiosity. You use the, obviously you have your judgment and all of those type of things. But I think, the softer skills are going to be enable us to be that translator and that sensor, and how do we do it going forwards.
I love how you said it. Keep you in the game. So talking about our young members, what advice would you give them other than soft skills?
What advice would I give them on soft skills? I think in terms of stay curious, always learn, seek feedback. Don't assume bad intent. Yeah, because like people will often like get defensive when, especially if you go, oh, Ragged, I'm going to sit down now and I'm going to give you some feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight away you go into, right.
Rebel, become defensive. Yeah.
Potentially you come into, and you probably now start to listen to defend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than actually, hang on, where does that come from? What do I do? Have that conversation. So, not everybody in your organisation will have the answer. Okay, and so as you are starting your career, yes, there's somebody probably leading you or your team, but they may or may not have the answer. So so speak, be proactive. Come with solutions, come with ideas. But if when the team decides on something, back it, commit it. Don't sort of try and do that. And I think in terms of that, just be open, seek every opportunity, grow from that, because you never know what that might lead to.
Yeah.
When I first moved to Australia, somebody said to me, never turn down an invite, because you never know who you might meet and may or not may meet. And when you move in countries, organisations, roles, those connections, it might not mean something today, but it could mean something in the future. So keep your connections, keep learning, keep growing.
It's a good community, so your colleague could become your client the next day.
Yeah, and I think in terms of that, I would also say, like, I've got a lot from the internal audit profession, and now we're both volunteers with the Institute of Internal Auditors. Give back. Mentor others if you can. Seek mentoring opportunities if you're early in your career and you want to help. Seek mentors, seek opportunities. Find out who your advocates are, but also give back. Because if you give back to the community, you're helping shape that community as well.
You're helping it grow and evolve.
Yeah.
What still excites you about internal audit after all these years?
Well, still excites me. Well, hopefully, like you've seen or you hear in terms of that. I mean, I just have such energy for it, and I think this is in terms of what excites me and around it is that opportunity to make a difference. Even when you look at your role every day, and you might be sat there, you might be listening to this. If you're listening onto it on the podcast, you might be listening to it, and you might be just writing emails, and you might just be writing a report, and you might be thinking, this is...
Or frustrated.
this is just the worst thing ever. But it's all around the perspective that you do. And so, very much in terms of, like, think about what it is why you were writing that report.
Yeah.
You're writing that report to, as I say, to help decisions. So how valuable and important is that to somebody else?
I love that. Yes.
I just I think it's just that, and there's not many roles in an organisation that give you the opportunity and the breadth that you get through an internal audit role. You sort of look at it and you go, where else do you get that? And, you know, if you love variety, if you love the fact that no 2 days are the same, and that one day you might be in the weeds.
In the theatre room in a hospital.
Yeah, well, yeah, one day you might be in a theatre room in a hospital, and the other day you might be presenting to your audit committee and, you know, having a conversation, a challenging conversation. Another day you might be rolling your sleeves up and doing testing. And I just don't think there's ever any role that gives you that opportunity. And I think if you look at it like that, from that perspective, and I sort of, when you say about if somebody new is starting, I would also say, you know, don't focus on title.
Yeah.
And
that's important.
That, because titles will come.
Yeah.
If you, do your job well, and seek the next opportunity. You know, titles, and I'm not saying opportunity from a role career progression.
Yeah.
I'm saying opportunity from, like, putting your hand up to maybe do jobs that nobody else wants to do, or audits that nobody else wants to do. You know, putting your hands up for those audits that perhaps you think are a bit mundane, but look at it as to, well, what is the opportunity that I can do to improve this going forward? Because those are the things that your leaders look for. Those are the things that leaders look for. Leaders look for people who, you know, volunteer to do things.
Curious.
Are curious, you know, come with ideas, come with solutions.
Yeah.
They don't look for people to come and go, tell me what to do next.
Yeah.
You saw there is the phrase where people, you know, say, ask for, you know, don't wait for permission, ask for forgiveness. ask for forgiveness. And I think in terms of that, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not in life-death situations in our roles. Maybe in some, you know, maybe some people will have to deal with those, dependent on industries and sectors and things. But we are there to enjoy what we do, and I would, you know, I sort of sit there and I go back and I look now and I go, if somebody had recommended to me to become an internal auditor when I said I fell into it, I'd have probably gone, oof, no. But I look back now and I just go, wow, the opportunity that it gives you and the career that it gives you, and just the, you know, yes, it has challenges like any sort of job, but the variety, that ability to make a difference, that ability to influence, I just think is really powerful, and it's not something that we should take for granted.
No, thank you for that. That's beautifully well said. What's the concern to you today, after all these years, about the profession?
What concerns me is that we don't respond quick enough as a profession. We try to keep. So we have obviously good boundaries in good governance, and we've got to keep the good governance and all of those type of things. But if we are too slow to enable an organisation that's changing, then that potentially concerns. Now, there's a time, obviously, absolutely, when we need to put the brakes on and go, yep, this is going to cause us some unintended consequences, and this is going to cause us issues, and absolutely there's times when we do definitely need to put the brakes on. But I think there's also a time where organisations will be moving at speed, and we either don't keep up with them, or we don't keep up to date with our skills and our technology and experience and various things, that we get left behind, and then they start to look to others for assurance and those type of different things. And I think if you look at it from the perspective of that, with speed becomes, you know, people do take shortcuts, and people take the easy exits and things. And so we've still got to, how do we keep an organisation, and how do we maintain that integrity of the organisation and keep that at true north? And so when speed happens, you know, we've got to be that trustworthy, go back to being your censor, your guardian, your translator and your learner. We've got to play all of those roles to enable an organisation to keep that integrity and move forward at speed, but without being a blocker. And I think that's where it's going to be a fine balance.
It's interesting. I think that's why we're shifting more to agile internal audit these days. It's where we become more flexible and more up to date with what's happening instead of just being stuck on the old practices.
Yeah. And I think it applies to your risk professionals as well, you know, your second line as well.
We're one team.
Yeah, we're, you know, like if you look at it as in terms of that, because like, you know, the biggest risk is the one we miss.
Yeah.
And if we're looking over here and the organisation's over here, because that's what our policy says or our, you know, methodology says.
Yeah.
Then
we'll be going in different directions.
We're going in different directions, and we're not going to help.
Add value. That's interesting. What's one thing you wish you knew when you started your career after all these years?
Ooh, one thing that I wish I'd known when I started, I think it would be and I've got to think about how I actually phrase it, because it's sort of, there's a couple of things probably from there, but I think because you have your varied career, and I went early on, I probably sought next opportunities, titles, sort of moving that round, and obviously that was really, really good. But I think it was really, for me, is that what is my sense of purpose? What are my values? And if I look back, and I sort of like look back when I first started to do it, we started the conversation and I said I became an accountant, and that was type of the sort of things. I probably never really knew what drove me to do that. And so having that sense of purpose, being really clear on why I do it, what my values are, what is important to me, I think that because that then is really helps you drive where you go next. And I think, you know, you've got to remember, you know, we spend quite a lot of time in our jobs and in our careers, and it's your career and it's your life, so live it. Live it and enjoy it. Don't let other people tell you what you should be doing with your career in your life, because it's not theirs, it's yours. And I think that's probably one of the things that when I very early on, when, you know, I did what people probably thought I should do or told me I should do. And as you become a little bit older, you become a little bit like more, is this important for me, and is this going to help me live my life?
Yeah.
And I think that's not just from an audit profession, that's just a life, career, whatever profession. And I think if you look at it that lens, when people give feedback and you get feedback, is that going to make a difference? Yeah, I always look at it in two ways. I go, well, first of all, thank you very much for the feedback. It's great, and let me understand how it came from. And once I understand where it came from, I have two decisions. If that situation happened again, would I do anything differently?
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe not. If it's no, or maybe not, then you have to be prepared that next time that situation happens, you're going to get exactly the same feedback, and that's going to be okay. And so that is probably something I learned a lot later, that actually it's okay to be, to actually say no to things, and it's okay to go, actually, that's not important to me, for whatever, and don't apologise for that.
It is very important. That's why we keep telling the new joiners on work, say no. You don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's a great note to end. Judith, thank you for sharing your experience. It was really interesting. Every time we have this conversation, it gets more and more exciting. So really valuable perspective. Thank you for sharing your experience. And thanks to everyone for listening to the first podcast we're doing. And thanks to Audit Express for allowing us to use their offices for this series. If this conversation sparked a new thinking, we encourage you to share it with your colleagues and continue the discussion within your teams. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Internal Audit Real Conversations podcast. If you're inspired to grow your career in integrated assurance, join us next time for more ideas, fresh perspectives, and practical guidance to elevate your impact.